Well, welcome back. President Biden and other NATO leaders gathering in Lithuania this morning for the alliance's annual two-day summit. Ukraine is expected to dominate the conversation there, but the China threat is also in focus. Leaders are expected to discuss relations with partners in the Indo-Pacific region. Lithuania, who's hosting this meeting, strengthened its ties to Taiwan ahead of this summit. In a strategy it listed economic ties with Taiwan as one of its, quote, strategic priorities. Joining me right now is Iowa Congresswoman, House Appropriations Committee member, and House Select Committee on the Chinese Communist Party, Ashley Hinson. Congresswoman, it's good to see you this morning. Thanks very much for being here. I know that Communist China was a major topic of conversation for the G20, and it is once again. What are your thoughts on what's happening at NATO so far? Sweden now added to the alliance.
Right. Well, I think we are seeing some positive momentum here, Maria, that developing these diplomatic relationships to counter the CCP's aggression is exactly what we should be doing. And in the United States, we need to be looking at the Indo-Pacific and continuing to develop those relationships with our partners there, because if there's one thing we learned, it's that we need to be focused on creating a supply chain that doesn't rely on China. The one way where we can really do that, where we can decrease our reliance on them, is to develop those relationships. So we're not reliant on them for pharmaceuticals, for example, or semiconductors. So seeing this, I think, is a very positive step forward, and we need to continue to do more of that in the Indo-Pacific.
In a 2020 speech, Xi Jinping said something along the lines of, we need to get the world reliant on the Chinese supply chain so that we could shut it off when we deem appropriate. So that's how he sees it, and we saw that and felt that during COVID when there were threats that they would not send us the underlying active ingredients in prescription drugs because of the way the U.S. was pushing for an investigation into Wuhan. So what can NATO alliance do about it?
Well, it's exactly what is happening. This is a good first step, and like I said, positive momentum here. When we had the opportunity as a bipartisan delegation from the China Select Committee to go to California and meet with President Tsai Ing-wen, we had that conversation about how we can be further assisting them in developing those relationships in the Indo-Pacific. So this is, again, momentum, but we need to continue that in having those conversations. We need trade deals in the region. We need to be more aggressive on trade. The Biden administration hasn't signed any new trade deals, so to speak. So we're looking at Europe and what they're doing, and China and what they're doing to be aggressive in that space, both in Europe and in Africa, in the Central America region as well. We're seeing China be more aggressive. We need to counter that and show peace through strength, but peace through developing those relationships.
Yeah, but look, China is ramping up its aggression, right? And it continues. Spy balloon, police stations. We've got new details on the Chinese spy Fang Fang and her relationship with Eric Swalwell. And China is calling on the United States to take, quote, practical action in response to the major concerns about American sanctions on Chinese firms after Treasury Secretary Janet Yellen's trip. The military in China reportedly developing new high-tech weapons designed to disrupt brain functions to influence government leaders or entire populations. Congressman, they've got their plans in place from spies sleeping with congressmen to police stations in America to intellectual property theft. What are we doing about it?
Right. We've been asleep at the wheel, and if we're not careful, we're going to continue to sleepwalk into another decade of this appeasement and failed diplomacy. They expect us to bend over backwards to get into the room to even have the conversation with them. And the way I see it, the appeasement tour by the Biden administration continues with Janet Yellen's visit. We didn't come out with any concessions. We didn't come out with any accountability for that spy balloon, for them sailing their military ship in front of ours in the Taiwan Strait, for setting up that police station on American soil. So we need to change the dynamic here. Instead of bending over backwards and appeasing them, we need to start asking for concessions. It's time for us to realize that we can't take China for its word. Anything they're saying about diplomatic relations is just lip service, and we need to show strength because bullies respond to strength.
Well, what are you doing about this in the China committee? Look at what we're looking at. Janet Yellen bowing to her counterpart in China. All of this aggression from Communist China, and we go to kiss the ring and we bow to them?
Yeah, I think that's completely unacceptable. And again, the only way they're going to respond is if we go into the room and show that strength. They didn't ask for anything. They bent over backwards. We need to develop trade deals that actually have teeth in them. That's another thing that I think our committee is looking at, is making sure we can provide some accountability there if they don't follow through. While I think that we can't completely sever our ties with China economically, we do need to go into it eyes wide open. We're actually going to be having a hearing coming up in our committee, our select committee on strategic competition with China, about the business community and how they need to be eyes wide open about those ties and relationships with China and what that looks like going forward. So we're trying to approach this from all angles: military, economic, and diplomatic as well.
Well, I'm hearing major Wall Street firms want in on the IPO of Syngenta. Syngenta is going public. It's a subsidiary of China National Chemical Corp and an affiliate of Sinochem Group. It was on the sanctions list under the Trump administration, but Joe Biden took it off the sanctions list, and now it's going public, going to raise all this money. So, I mean, this is in step with what we've been seeing. All of these Chinese companies raising money from American investors. They are unwittingly funding the expansion of our number one adversary.
Absolutely, and then those resources will be used against us, which is what I am most concerned about, especially being from Iowa, where we're looking at biotech and corn, for example, and the seeds that go into the development, the R&D that goes into the development of corn. We had a Chinese spy ring that was actually busted in our state a little over a decade ago. They were trying to steal that very technology, and what do you think they're going to do with us? They're going to cheat. They're going to steal that technology, and then they're going to use it against us. Food security is national security. We need to be eyes wide open about the economic impact here as well. But again, I see this as an appeasement tour. If we're not showing strength with who we're sending and how they're conducting themselves on those visits, then that's a real miss by the Biden administration as far as I'm concerned. And we need to step up to the plate.
Well, I mean, at this point, Mike Baker, we all know the reality of communist China. By the way, the FBI tells us all the time that this is our number one adversary, but this administration will not call China an adversary. It's a competitor, according to them.
Opening up counterintelligence investigations every day related to China and the Chinese regime. Congresswoman, obviously Taiwan has been in focus, remains in focus as the number one concern, their military buildup in the South China Sea, but bringing it closer to home, right, in our own backyard, essentially. Obviously, there was some awareness and media coverage of their activities, the Chinese regime's activities in Cuba, looking to build a military facility there. But even in our neighborhood in Central America, the socialist president of Honduras, Castro, just visited China, and their personnel have been in Honduras. They're now agreeing to strengthen their ties. And this is nothing new. They've been building ground facilities throughout Latin America. So is the committee, the China committee that you sit on, are they aware of this happening this close to home? And is there any concern over the efforts by the Chinese regime? Because obviously they're not strengthening their ties with Honduras because they love the Honduran people and they're worried about their well-being.
Right. Everything for China is about that long-term strategy of becoming that world economic superpower by 2049. And they have not been shy about saying that. So it's military, it's economics, and it's diplomatic relations. And that's exactly what they've done. They're strategically buying up and using funds to secure ports, to secure those critical minerals around the world. Again, while we've been asleep at the wheel for 40 years. So we are absolutely aware of this. It is a huge threat. And I do think China, the Communist Party of China, is our number one adversary and threat. And if we're not considering them as that, then we are asleep at the wheel. You talk about what they're trying to do for I guess the brainwaves. They're trying to use technology to influence brainwaves of American government officials. They're trying to do that to their own people too. So we have to be very, very cognizant about that. And again, develop policies that will help make us strategic in the long term, so that the next century is an American one, not a Chinese one.
Time is running out. We are watching your work, Congresswoman Hinson. Thank you.